Hey, everybody, and welcome to the My Father Said podcast, where we discuss all things faith, finance, and family. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan. I'm both a father and a son.
And I'm Robert. I'm his dad, and I'm my dad's son.
And today, we want to talk to you guys about an investment strategy called dollar cost averaging, what it is, and how you can implement it.
Absolutely. The first thing I want to do is I want to bring into, our catchphrases, faith, family, and finance. Mm-hmm. And obviously, we like to use biblical principles when it comes to managing money and setting money aside. So how does this work with this thing called dollar cost averaging? Well, Solomon in Proverbs 13, verse 11 to be precise, half of that verse, he makes the comment in here, he says, whoever gathers little by little will increase it. And that is essentially the foundational point of what dollar cost averaging would be. The official term today is dollar cost averaging is essentially an investment strategy where the investor regularly, systematically contributes a fixed amount of money into an investment regardless of the asset's price over a specified period of time.
Yeah. Here's how it realistically works. So the first thing is regular investments. That is, you just, no matter what's going on, you keep putting contributions in at a fixed date. Maybe that's once a month. Maybe that's bi-weekly. What we see a lot of the time is people normally do dollar cost averaging, and they just line it up with how they get paid. So we've got people that get paid weekly, and they contribute every single week. We've got people that get paid twice a month. They do it twice a month, and so on and so forth. But the key there is regular. We talked about this the other day. The majority of millionaires in America, they get to that status through their 401k, and the 401k is dollar cost averaging because they pull the money out of the paycheck before they even think about it. It is a habit. It is something they do, and it takes the thought and the motion out of it.
Absolutely. 401k is the epitome of the illustration of dollar cost averaging. Yeah. And on top of that, you get the bonus if your employer is so kind to give you free money to put in there along with it.
Love it.
So it's a wonderful process. Another advantage of dollar cost averaging is it takes the emotion out of it. So very often people try to time the market, and that's not a good practice, because if we could all time to market, I wouldn't be sitting here today. Mm-hmm. I would be on that island down in the Caribbean that I was planning on purchasing when I timed the market correctly. Well, I'm in front of this podcast right now, so obviously I did not get that timing exactly right. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to smooth out over time the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of price volatility in the market.
Yeah.
Sometimes when the market is high, you're putting in that fixed amount of money, you're buying fewer shares than you would be if the market were low. You would be buying more shares. So it actually levels that out over a period of time so that when you go back in history and your history and you look back at your graph of your investments you put in, that line that in the near term might look jagged up and down is actually a much smoother, straighter appearing line over a span of 25, 30 years versus a span of 5 months.
Yeah.
So it's a great tool to help you absolutely reduce the overall volatility of trying to time the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another thing that we have seen with this is people who dollar cost average when the market's up, when the market's down, they really don't seem bothered by either one. Mm-hmm. They keep putting money away. Where we see an issue of people consistently putting money in is when they do try to time it, because either the market is way too high and it couldn't get any higher, so I'm not going to put my money in, or
absolutely,
man, the market's down and it's just not going to come back.
It's terrible.
And so, we know people that from the 2008 housing crash, people still have not put money back into the market because they're so nervous. And then there's individuals who dollar costed straight through the housing crisis, and here they are today. Mm-hmm. So it's, again, dollar cost averaging is so effective because you don't have to time the market. You don't have to worry about if the market is up or if it is down, because it'll level out and takes the thought out of it.
Yeah. My favorite thing I believe about dollar cost averaging, though, is the consistency and the discipline that it brings in. I don't want to say set it and forget it, but whenever you go with your employer and you choose the percentage out of your paycheck you're going to contribute to your plan, your paycheck comes every week, that money's taken out before you see it, and the next thing you know, you've worked at that employer for numerous years, and your 401k statement's looking very nice. Another thing is when you come in, you work with a broker-dealer such as ourselves, you come in, you set up your account, you tie your investments to your checking savings account at your local bank, and you say, all right, every month I'm going to put in X number of dollars in my investment.
That's right.
And you treat it almost like it's a bill, but it's not a bill because you're paying yourself.
That's right.
But you almost treat it that way, and so every month I got to deduct this out of my account, and before you realize it again, life has happened. And time has passed by, and you start getting your statements, and then seemingly out of nowhere, where did this money come from?
Yeah.
So it creates the discipline and the consistency, which is absolutely vital for dollar cost averaging to actually be productive and gainful for you.
Yeah. And you think about it, with anything in life, if you want to achieve something, it's discipline and it's consistency, and it's almost always small steps. Like nobody wakes up and they say, hey, I'm going to go run a marathon, and they just do it that day. They start out, hey, I'm going to walk every week, and then I'm going to build it up, and I'm going to run every week, and then I'm going to run a certain amount every week and stuff like that. And so anything in life, whether it's health, whether it's finances, whether it's stuff with your family, it is always small intentional steps, and dollar cost averaging is just extremely helpful with that. It's a very natural process for that to happen.
Absolutely. In a moment, we're going to go through some hypothetical projections of dollar cost averaging and the monies it would make. But prior to us doing that, Ryan, why don't you talk to them about Einstein's approach to compounding and perhaps the historical earnings of the S&P 500 before we go into this?
Yeah. So you might be sitting there thinking about, okay, hey, I've never heard of dollar cost averaging before, but if I only put away $50 a month, for however many years, it's not going to turn into anything. I'm only going to have the money that I put away. Well, that's not the case if you are invested. If you are invested into the market, you are getting exposed to something called compound interest. Compound interest is so powerful that Albert Einstein referred to that as the eighth wonder of the world. And some of the graphs we're going to show you, or we're going to talk about rather, express just that. We ran a couple of numbers for you guys that shows, hypothetically, what it would take you contribution-wise to have $1 million at age 65, assuming that the market, the compound interest, is about 10% a year. That is realistic. That number.
Guarantee I'm gonna get 10% every year?
No, that is not a guarantee.
That sounded like a guarantee.
That is not. This is a hypothetical. There's no guarantee.
What does that word mean?
I don't know what hypothetical means.
It's a big word, but I heard guarantee.
It makes me sound fancy.
Yeah, well, I heard guarantee. Big words.
No, but the 10%, that is a reasonable number that you could expect. If we look at the S&P 500 from the last 100 years until now, it has averaged right at 10.5%. So we did a little conservative, not by much, but a little conservative compared to the S&P 500, which again would be a reasonable number that you could expect.
All right, so Ryan, for our listeners who may not be familiar with the S&P 500, I know they've heard the Dow.
Sure.
All right, and they probably heard the market. But what is the S&P 500?
I have no idea. I can tell you.
Well,
the S&P 500 is for the last 100 years, it has been a very popular index. And basically what that is it's just a mutual fund that tracks the largest 500 companies in the U.S. stock market.
Okay, that's an index fund? Okay, all right. Well, good deal. So, Basically, what you just said is that over the last 100 years, the market, the S&P 500 has averaged somewhere in the neighborhoods of 10.5%. Mm-hmm. And so for our illustration purposes today, just to give you guys out there in podcast land, just some food for thought. You might be thinking, you know what, I wasn't born with a silver spoon. Life is hard. I just don't think I'm going to be able to accumulate monies, the kind of monies that Robert and Ryan are speaking about. I don't think it's possible. It's not for me. It sounds great. Athletes, movie stars, professional singers, they make this kind of money, not me. Well, we want to share some things with you here today to kind of just give you some thought. If you're driving, don't stop and pull over. Don't write this down. When you get back home, just listen to the podcast again, because these are numbers that are very doable, we believe. And if you have questions about it, feel free to reach out to us or reach out to whoever it is that you're working with that advises you. But here's some things I want to talk to you. So let's assume that you are age 25. All right, and you're just starting out in life. You went to school, perhaps you went to college, maybe you didn't. But at age 25, you've kind of gotten some of the sowing my seeds behind yourself. At least I hope you have. And you're now starting to maybe not really formulate your future, but you've seen mom and dad, and you've seen aunts and uncles and grandparents, and you're thinking, you know what, I'm going to be that age one day if I live long enough. What do I need to set aside? And I've always heard I want to be a millionaire, whatever that is. So what do you need to set aside? Well, I'm going to show you two numbers here, a couple of numbers, but we're going to point out something to you that I absolutely do not want you to miss. So if you're age 25, you've got 40 years longer than you have been alive to start setting money aside. And if you wanted to be a millionaire by age 65, assuming a hypothetical rate of return of 10%, you would need to set aside just $180 a month. Now, I know at age 25, that might be a lot. I understand that. But the important thing is to start, begin, and work your way up to that number. Yeah. You might not be able to do the full thing right off the bat. If it's $25, start at $25. If you can get it to 35, then 45, then 65, just keep working up as you get your spending under control and as hopefully as your income increases. But if you were to do that for 40 years at age 65, you would have right in the neighborhoods of $1,007,000. But here's the important thing. Ryan, won't you explain to them how much they put in and then how much of that $1,007,000 is actually growth?
Yeah. So again, you would be investing for 40 years, and of that $1 million that we were talking about, you would have contributed right at $86,400. That's how much you would have contributed. Growth in the account, that compound interest that we talked about, that would be right at $920,000 that grew. You did not have to put that money in. To put it another way, 91% of the $1 million that you would have, you did not have to come up with it. The market did that for you.
That's incredible.
That's a no-brainer, yeah.
Yeah, if you think about that, Ryan, that essentially means for the majority of Americans today that somewhere down the line, their investment portfolio is going to be paying them more money each year than probably their employment job is paying them.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, all you did was put in $86,000, and $86,000 turned into $1 million.
Yeah.
And that's if you're age 25. So there's really no excuse for anyone out there who wants to take the initiative to take control of their financial future. They might not know where they want to go. They might not know how much they want to have. But if they say, I want to be a millionaire.
Right.
There you go at age 25. But let's talk about the importance of compounding, and let's talk about the importance of delaying.
Yeah.
If you just waited 5 years, all right, and said, hey, all right, I'm not going to start at 25. I'm going to start at 30. So instead of doing $180 a month, now you got to do $300 a month. Yeah. And the important thing on that is the person has now put $126,000 in, and they have accumulated $1,027,000. And it's the same thing. They put in $126,000, but of course with that, they had to put more money, but the growth on that is still significant because the growth is showing up to be $900,000.
Yeah. So the takeaway there is, yeah, obviously it would be better to start earlier, but if you start at 30, 35, 40, you are in no way, shape, or form out of the ball game. Like, even if you started 5 years later, the fact that you still have $900,000 worth of growth in that account, yet you're still winning. You are still taking advantage of compounding interest. It is not too late for you to start putting that money away to get to the millionaire status. Very doable.
That is ridiculous. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous how money can work for you over time if you just settle. And here's the thing about it. If you remember, the consistency and the discipline and the advantage of dollar cost averaging is when you commit to the strategy, it matters not to you, the investor, who is president.
Yeah.
Are you a Republican or a Democrat? Who's in charge of the House? Who's in charge of the Senate? It doesn't care if it's raining outside or if it's snowing, if gasoline prices are at all-time highs or if the housing market is in the gutter.
Right.
It does not matter. As long as you stay consistent, over time your investment averages, hypothetically, that 10%. These numbers, they bear out at the end. So it doesn't matter. So I say this because very often so many novice investors, depending on what their favorite news channel is, that influences them to make some of the most irrational, insane, dumbest decisions you could ever make with your money.
Yes.
You know, Glenn Beck don't know who you are. All right? Sean Hannity don't know who you are. And whoever these other people are on CNN and elsewhere, they don't know who you are.
I'm gonna just throw something else out there. You might think that gold is a wonderful investment because Glenn Beck and whoever else told you that gold's a wonderful investment. They getting paid to say that, just so you know.
Yeah.
Ask Glenn Beck to show you what his portfolio is and see how much gold's in there.
You know, he probably has some.
He probably, yeah, maybe a little bit.
Chances are they gave it to him. Chances are. I mean, it's like these basketball players who wear these Nike Jordans.
Yeah.
Chances are Nike gave them shoes to wear.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
You know, chances are. It's not saying that gold's a bad investment. It has its place.
Sure.
It has its place. But you know, let's regress from that and get back to what we're talking about. I told you to stay on track today. God, always chasing rabbits.
Let's kick it down a decade. So we just talked if we started about at age 30.
Yeah.
What if we started at age 40?
Well, at age 40, here's a huge difference here. So at age 30, you had to do $300 a month. You had 35 years to go. But of course, at age 40, you're now down to 25 years. At age 40, essentially, you would have to do $805 a month.
Yeah.
So it's getting a little more costly.
Almost tripled. Now, here's something else to think about, though, with the age 40. If you started working at a normal age, you know, sometime between 18 and 22, you know, if you got out of college or something, you being at 40, you're probably making more money than you ever have in your life. So $805, yes, that's much more expensive than the $180 if you started at 25, but you're probably making a little bit more money. You can cover that. So we look at that, and if you were to contribute the $805 a month for 25 years, you would still finish right around $1 million in your portfolio. You would have contributed $241,000 of that million, and then you would have had $759,000 worth of growth.
Still great growth.
Still great growth. Percentage-wise, that's 76%. You have contributed less than the market performed.
Yeah.
You only contributed, what is that, 24% that you contributed to your $1 million. So you're still in the green, you're still good. So that's, again, if you're sitting here and you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, I'm 40, it is way too late for me. It is not. It is not. You can absolutely get to that millionaire mark at 65.
Absolutely. And what happens, too, is we look a little bit further down the age. Let's go a decade later. Let's go to age 50. Generally, at age 50, there's some things happening in the house that changes. Generally, the children are grown and gone, unless you've got one of those basement dwellers that just will not leave. Yeah. And I have found that the best way to get them out of the house is either flood it or put a match to it.
Change the locks too.
Change the locks and things like that. That gets them out the house. But now,
is that how you got rid of Ethan? Because I mean, he's not even in the same state.
Well, you know, I had to put my foot down. So, but I love you, Ethan. If you're hearing this, your brother is the one who is disparaging you.
You know what?
You to know.
Speaking of matches, and we're talking about Ethan, do you remember when Ethan almost set the house on fire?
Yes, I do.
All right. Do you remember which time I'm talking about? Because apparently there was more than once.
Well, I remember when he come around the corner and he was asking me just very nonchalantly, Daddy, how does the fire extinguisher work? And I thought, what an odd question. And I'm like, son, why are you asking me that? Oh, I just want to know, Dad. And it's like, really, why? And about that time, I noticed smoke coming out the other room. And when I walked around the corner, you and he were in there with the flames blazing up out of the garbage can. And thankfully, we were able to get it out of the building.
I remember that vividly because as Ethan is asking you how to use it, I'm sitting there watching the flames get higher and higher and higher. And then you came by and got it out. I remember that.
Yeah. It is amazing you and he made it to adulthood. It's absolutely amazing. But anyway, so for the 50-year-old, who has 15 years less, it's going to cost a little bit more money because, you know, you've got shorter time. But theoretically, you're at the high earnings point in your life. A lot of the obligations you've had with raising children have now gone because they're out of the house. You should have some discretionary income. Perhaps your mortgage is now paid off and you've got some money and you've got to get extremely serious about saving for your retirement because, hey, whether you expect it or not, age 65 is coming.
Yeah.
All right, and it's coming 24 hours at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah.
And it's not holding still and it's not going in reverse. So for the 50-year-old with 15 years to go, to be a millionaire in 15 years, they need to set aside $2,500 a month. And what that'll do for them is they have set aside $450,000, and the growth on that money would be $554,000, putting them right at $1 million. So now you're seeing it's almost a one for one.
Yeah. At that point, you've got 55% of that has been in growth. So you're about to break even on how much you contributed versus how much the market did. But still, even at that point, I've got $1 million and I'll only put in half of it. That's if you're starting late and you're 50 years old, that is still very doable. You can have $1 million and you only had to contribute half of that. That's still stellar numbers.
Yes, some incredible numbers. When you get up to ages 55 and age 60, just the cost of what you would have to set aside on a monthly basis, I'm not sure the average American would be able to do it. I mean, you're looking at having to set aside $5,000 to $13,000 per month for the next 5 and 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm not going to say it's impossible.
Right.
But it's extremely difficult. So that's the advantage of starting early, being disciplined to commit to it, and to be consistent. And for heaven's sakes, I know we went off on a tear just a moment ago about emotions and television advertisers and things like that, but you've got to trust history. And history has shown in every event that's ever happened in the world how the market has behaved and how it has been the best economic engine that has ever existed. And you just have to trust the process. And the process is discipline, consistency, time in the market, not timing the market.
Right.
Don't pursue returns, pursue the objective. Now, if you want to hear some incredible numbers, we talked about the 25-year-old, the 30-year-old, the 35-year-old, but what if you as a parent wanted to change the generation?
Yeah.
What if you wanted to make your children or help your child become the next Rockefeller family or the next Kennedy family or whomever you can think of that has just had a lot of accumulation over time? If you're the parent that's going to practice financial discipline, And if you're the person who is going to bring financial awareness into your home and you want to accumulate money and you want to do what Scripture says is a father leaves their children a great inheritance, that is more than money. That's knowledge. All right. And it's also an inheritance of a relationship with our Lord. But if you want to understand how it works when it comes to money, I want to share something with you that is beyond imagination. Imagine that you are the parent of a newborn child. So that child's got 65 years before that child is age 65. If you were to set aside money in an investment for that child, and that investment just averaged the market, 10% a year, all you have to do is set aside $17 a month for 65 years. At the end of 65 years, all that was put in that account, you do the math, was $13,261.
Yep. That is 98% of that $1 million was just growth.
98%.
98%.
Growth amount was $1,038,000 on $13,261. That is
You talk
ridiculous.
about leaving a legacy for your family and changing generations. That is unreal. Because, I mean, you think about it, $17, I can set that aside for a newborn. I can do that right now. And then when they get to 18, I can stop putting the 17 in and they can pick it up.
Let them do it.
And if they don't have the wherewithal to keep that 17 going, just don't give them the money.
Exactly.
Just don't give them the money.
Yeah.
And then you keep it.
Absolutely.
But I mean, you talk about that. You start that out. $17 a month from a newborn. You're going to talk about that. You're going to educate your kids on that. And by the time they're 18 and they've got a firm foundation of what's going on, what you've been putting away from them, and how they have learned to handle it, they can pick that up. Even if they go to college and they're not working for a while, they can wait tables. I waited tables in college. They can make enough money to cover $17 a month to go into their portfolio. And then you've trained an entire generation, your children, to do that. Then what happens if they start it for their kids and you have single-handedly changed the trajectory of your family for generations to come? Simple step. Simple step.
And think about this as a parent wanting to teach children the value of saving money. Say when your child gets a certain age and they get a job.
Yeah.
You can now say to the child, you know what? You put in $17 a month.
I'll match you.
I'll match you $17 a month.
Yes.
Just to teach them the value of, hey, this is a way to make money, and just continue to do the encouraging for them to grow. Let them get financial literacy. Let them learn things. Give them proper books to read.
Yes.
One of my favorite is The Richest Man in Babylon. I've said it before, and that's one of my favorite books. The English in it isn't the best because it's old English, but the fundamentals in it, I swear, are great.
Yeah.
Great. And let's say you didn't think about this. You're thinking, gosh, I wish I'd have heard this 15 years ago when I had my child.
Yeah, and I got a 15-year-old.
And so now I've got a 15-year-old. Well, it's the same thing, but the 15-year-old, now you're doing $70 a month.
Yep.
But it's almost the same. They put in $42,000 from age 15 to age 65 for 50 years. They put in $42,000, and the growth on that was $988,000 to make them a millionaire.
Yeah. Still.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Unreal. Yeah.
Yeah. So folks, that's dollar cost averaging. That is the tried and true, most consistent, most efficient method for you to accumulate wealth over time. We just chose the $1 million number. You can say, I want 500,000, or you can say, I want 2 million, or whatever your number is. There are numerous calculators on the web that you can plug in the variables to find out how much you have to do. But the most important thing is you want to get that thing started. You might not need the services of a financial advisor as you're just starting, but eventually your money's going to get to the point to where it's going to become more and more complex from a tax code. And that's when you're going to want to have a competent CPA involved in your life and competent financial advisors involved in your life as well. So we wanted to share this with you today and just let you mull this over and let you chew on it a little bit. Well, so Ryan, anything in closing?
Yeah, I would just say that if you guys can't tell, we get fired up about this. This is a lot of fun for us. We enjoy talking about it. If you are saying to yourself, man, I want to start. I want to start dollar cost averaging. I want to make my way towards that millionaire mark. Give us a call, shoot us an email. We would love to sit down and get that implemented for you. Maybe you just have questions or you want to learn more about it. Let us know. We'd love to sit down and talk. We enjoy this. We do it all day, and it is a great time. So we look forward to hearing from you. But with that, I'm Ryan.
Hey, and I'm Robert. This is the My Father Said podcast. We're getting ready to sign off. I got two things I want to share with you. Scott, our producer, is so enthralled by today's podcast, he hasn't made a sound. He is taking it in.
Yeah.
He is absolutely taking it in. The final thing I would say to you is this, and it's something I think we're going to say every time as we get ready to close out our podcast as a reminder. Do not get caught in the trap of chasing investment returns. Mm-hmm. Instead, pursue your individual financial objective. This is the My Father Said podcast. And we said, get out of here.
The opinions voiced in this video are for general information only and are not specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance reference is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful.